But Jake, the way that they're talking about these workers, are they facing any blowback? Is it hurting them?
Well, I don't know if it's hurting them. They are facing blowback. Some of it is being, put on by Democrats and Democratic groups, and there's nothing wrong with that. Republicans do the same thing. It's to highlight what they believe are unpopular decisions, and they are difficult decisions. There are two dynamics here, Katie. Well, if let me just say this at the top, if Marjorie Taylor Greene believes federal employees don't deserve a paycheck, members of Congress could start with their own. They all make $176,000 a year. If they think that people don't deserve a paycheck, they could start with themselves. They get paychecks. So that's number one. Number two, what you said just now was incredibly important. Everybody believes it is really easy politics to knock at the federal government for being bloated or overpaid or just too much altogether. That is popular politics. That is as old, a tale as old as time, right? But when you get into it and you start cutting people, and people are getting fired on a Wednesday and being told that they don't have a paycheck on a Friday, and that's difficult for families across the country. And we should note, these are not only people who live in the Washington metropolitan area. There are federal employees for all agencies sprinkled throughout the country. So when people go home, I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats, they are going to have some sort of federal worker in their district or in their state. And some of them might be impacted, and we don't know. And since this is only intensifying right now, Katie, the president said Elon should get more aggressive. When he gets more aggressive, presumably there's going to be more people laid off. And some of those people are going to be in Republican districts. And we're only 30 days into this administration, or 30-something days into this administration. We haven't seen the full turn of the screw yet. We have not seen how this will impact government operations. We haven't seen how this will impact in the employment situation in some districts. So the story is not done yet. And I just want to say, because this is important, number one, government is hard, right? Running a federal government's hard. Number two, appropriations is hard. This body, Congress, has ceded all of its power to the administration. It's embarrassing, to be honest with you, if you believe in a Congress that has control. But Congress, if they want to actually save money, when they fund the government in a couple weeks, they need to downsize the money that they're sending to these agencies. If there are 6,000 employees at the IRS who no longer have jobs, Congress can and should, if they want to follow Trump's direction, Congress can say, listen, we're not going to send the money for those salaries, those benefits, all of that money for those workers. That would start to save money. We'll see if they do that. I have a feeling they won't.
Yeah, but the IRS, they're the ones that make sure that everyone's paying their fair share. So firing IRS agents.
I was using that as an example. Yeah. I wasn't saying we should cut off money for the Congress should cut off money for the IRS. Let's take another example.
Jake, if you want to save money, you're not going to put up a $4.5 trillion tax cut. I mean, that's not also saving
Katie, this is
money.
This is a deeply unserious process. If you say you want to balance the budget, first of all, none of these budget resolutions that Congress passed balance the budget. But if you say you want to cut back on government outlays, government spending, but you're not going to touch Medicare or Social Security or really even the defense budget, this reconciliation bill that Donald Trump wants passed includes $100 billion in new money for the Pentagon. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, you could believe that Social Security, Medicare, and the Pentagon need some work. Congress is not touching any of those things. So you're chopping around the edges here. We are in debt $37 trillion, $36 trillion, whatever it is. And if you're not taking on everything, then you're only working around the edges. So it's an unserious process at its fundamental core.
Okay, we're going to get more into that in a couple minutes, but let's focus on Doge for a second again. And there was a question, Ashley, about who exactly was running Doge, because Elon Musk, the nominal head of Doge, is apparently not the head of Doge. The White House was asked about this yesterday. Caroline Leavitt really confusingly said she couldn't reveal the identity from the podium. But then she did reveal it a little bit later on, telling reporters who the person was. Let's listen.
Amy Gleason has been the DOJ administrator for quite some time, I believe several weeks, maybe a month. I'm not actually sure of the specific timeline. Everybody knew, and we said who she was to all of you because you are hounds in the media who are so obsessed with this for some reason. So in the effort of transparency, we told you who that person is. There are so many bigger things in the world than who the DOJ administrator is.
Hounds in the media obsessed with getting information. All right, so who's Amy Gleason?
Well, I mean, I will just say that first, that this is something I have struggled with in my own reporting, because when you talk to the White House and you try to report on DOJ, the attitude is that DOJ is everything and nothing, right? DOJ is responsible for, they would claim, all of these amazing cost-saving maneuvers, many of which they have come up with through faulty accounting or by accounting contracts that President Biden cut or that expired on his watch or were set to expire anyhow. So DOJ is sort of all-powerful, omnipresent, omnipotent. And then when you go to them and you say, we heard DOJ did this, or this person at DOJ did that, the response comes back, well, nobody works for DOJ. There is no DOJ. There's representatives of DOJ. Elon is a representative of DOJ. Katie Miller, who's married to Stephen Miller, is a representative of DOJ, which is all to say I cannot give you a very clear answer because this has been, by design from the White House, a very confusing, non-transparent process.
Speaking of transparency, let's talk about White House decisions on transparency. And David, the White House is now going to decide who's in the press pool. Why is it a big deal for the White House to decide who covers it?
Well, granting or denying access based on agreement with the White House's preferred words, for example, or whether or not you're asking tough questions. I mean, this stuff is sort of classic authoritarian behavior. You're trying to mold and you're trying to shape who the press is that's covering you. And so you're keeping at arm's length the people that you think might be critical. You're pulling in close the people you think are going to be cooperating with you. And so this is old behavior, but it is exactly consistent with all fronts here. I mean, the Donald Trump term is motivated by malice. There is malice towards the media. There is malice towards government workers. This is not about money, really, at DOJ. If DOJ was serious about fiscal conservatism and fiscal responsibility, you wouldn't be proposing tax cuts that are going to add trillions more to the deficit than DOJ will ever save in 100 years. DOJ isn't about money. It's about malice. It's about punishing members of the deep state. The foreign policy is about malice. Trump loathes President Zelensky. He loathes Ukraine. So you just go through this process again and again. And what you will find when you scratch the surface of administration policy is you find malice. You find malicious intent towards Trump's enemies. Same with the media, same with government workers, same with Ukraine. It's just the pattern.
What about what Jeff Bezos did? Could that be seen as a capitulation to Donald Trump, saying that the opinion page now will only uphold two priorities? That's free markets and what was the other one? Personal liberties?
In personal liberty and free markets. I mean, you know, can we not have our nation's great newspapers owned by people who are seeking billions of dollars of government contracts? I mean, this should be sort of media 101, perhaps. I mean, it's very difficult to see any of Bezos's maneuvers outside of that context. I mean, this is a guy who has a rocket company, Blue Origin. One of the reasons why SpaceX is so successful is the government contracts that have poured into SpaceX. So how are we to look at this? Is this a genuine desire to create the Washington Post editorial page as an engine of individual liberty, or is this a capitulation? Well, given that we have already seen the pattern as malice, punishment, vengeance, it's hard not to see moves like this as anything other than an effort to, at the very least, not be the enemy of the administration.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be as much of a glaring issue when you didn't have a president that was hell bent on making sure that everybody, towed the line and was out for retribution. Ashley, I mean, it was your home for so long. I know you hold it dear. Do you want to comment on any of this? Do you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, the reporters at the Post, the reporters and editors there, it's worth noting, are doing great journalism in the face of what has been absolutely rudderless leadership for some time now, from the top on down, and no clear business plan from the publisher. I said this publicly today, but I'll say it here. I think back to when I was still at the Post and our new publisher, Will Lewis, he came down, he didn't like some questions, frankly, pretty benign questions from his reporters. And he berated us and said, nobody is reading your stuff. That may or may not be true. I don't quite believe that's true, but I would just say the issue is not the quote unquote stuff. That stuff is also accountability journalism, Pulitzer Prize winning journalism, scoops, stories well told. The problem is right now at the Post, and this is the view I'm now reflecting of friends and colleagues at the Post, where you might imagine, in addition to reporting on Trump today, I've also been reporting on what's been going on at my former home, who believe there is no leadership and who believe, and this is not a belief, it's based on the numbers, that there's absolutely no business plan. And it's a tragedy when you have a paper like the Washington Post that regularly competes with all of their marketplace competitors and beats them, for there to be no business plan and no leadership.